Throughout making this video, I constantly asked myself just how outdated must something be before learning about it is considered archaeology, and how bad must something be before liking it belongs in the realm of things I should contact a professional about. Despite having a softer spot for what Greatsword has in store, I am not biased for it, and I understand that it borders mediocrity from the side of garbage. However, knowing and admitting that doesn't make me hate Greatsword. The only thing I hate just for being trash is myself. That said, me not feeling either disdain or apathy towards Greatsword makes me stand out from the crowd of people who agree that Greatsword bad and still keep using it. What also makes me stand out of this crowd is a specific kind of self-inflicted brain damage that lets me explain aforementioned phenomena of Greatsword being widely considered a heap of trash and also being commonly used. Rush is a very simple ability. You run up to someone and smack them. It travels large distance, it can be dash cut, and it hits for a respectable amount of damage. What not to love about this skill? For starters, it is ridiculously slow for a dash. It takes roughly 2 seconds to cross the same distance super speed lets you cross in 3, which is certainly better than walking, but given the nature of animation lock, casting this skill to approach an enemy head-on is roughly as smart as an average flat earther. Every class in the game has some sort of CC to throw your way, so instead of closing the gap, you just eat shit most of the time. And if not CC, 2 seconds is long enough to eat half of someone's damage department. So merely the necessary cast time of this skill forces you to be considerably careful while using it. But that's not the only layer of artificial dampener on this skill's reliability. Nigh religious fervor with which this skill aims to seize every opportunity to bug itself out is worth mention too. It must be considered that Rush can bug out on everything, including the target itself. All it takes is to stand partially inside enemy's hitbox for your ability to send you past the target and outside of melee range, which results in a miss. You can probably guess, for a class with a game plan revolving around staying within sniffing distance from a target, this presents a problem. But who in their right mind wants their skills to work reliably? I want the outcome of pressing any button on my keyboard to belong in the realm of esoteric mystery. Moving on to Blade Trail, we land on another sufficiently simple on-paper ability. You throw a sword that damages everything on its path and returns to you after reaching its full range, hitting everything on its path again. First gripe with that skill I have is that, for some reason, something that is clearly supposed to be an AoE is coded as piercing projectile, so it can be reflected or destroyed by all too common projectile denial skills. Second gripe is that hitting with Blade Trail is roughly as damaging as slapping someone with a handful of roadside weeds. This ability needs both of its instances of damage to land and to crit, to outdamage a singular crit from Impale. A condition damage skill, in realistic scenario, does more strike damage than a strike damage skill, on top of bringing conditions and follow-up skill which tips that comparison even further in its favor. Having potential to deal a good bit of damage if all your enemies line up and politely stand and wait isn't a justification for such stupidly low damage when all your enemies refuse to line up and politely wait, even in PvE. Side complaint, on GW2 Wiki, Impale is shown to have lower damage and scaling than Blade Trail, while in-game, both on tooltips and on damage feedback, it is opposite. In-game tooltips, my ass! That aside, let's get on to first skill in Greatsword's toolset that does what it's supposed to. Whirlwind attack doesn't overwhelm with damage, but is one of very few tools in Warrior's arsenal that allow it to deal damage and avoid damage simultaneously. Still, it manages to consistently outdamage a singular crit from Blade Trail, while also providing evasion frames and mobility, which, besides shining a spotlight at how bad the former really is, also pulls the weight of combined proto-mediocrity of both Rush and Blade Trail. That short and concise segment about a good skill, however, must be offset by much longer segment about utterly garbage one. 100 blades is roughly as good of a skill as shoving a wrench up your rear is a good way to treat constipation. This ability doesn't allow you to move or turn during 3.5 second cast time it probably parades with, over which it gradually deals 8 instances of damage in front of you. To portray how bad this is, Whirling Axe does twice the amount of damage over the same time period, while hitting everything around you and not just allowing you to move, but also speeding you up as well. So if 2 warriors cast each one of these abilities, respectively, the one casting Whirling Axe will not only win the trade no matter what, but he can also move behind his opponent and avoid a bunch of the damage. And this is not unique example. Every class in the game can outplay 100 blades by either teleporting behind warrior, attacking from outside its range, or just quickly trading with a burst combo to outdamage 100 blades and moving away before the bloody skill catches up with its painfully thinly spread damage output. This skill's cast time is so much of a drawback that unless your opponent is already out of cooldowns, CC'd, downed or brain damaged, casting 100 blades will end up being a net loss for you, and even if several of previous requirements were met, you can safely assume everything will go according to plan, as you are still suffering from self-inflicted Immobilize, and Immobilize wouldn't be considered a crowd control effect without a bloody reason. 100 blades is only passable as a skill in PvE, where you can safely access permanent quickness upkeep. While in both competitive modes, 100 blades demands you give your life to the Empire of the Rising Sun. Moving on, we as usual ignore autochain, as there's not enough to talk about, except the funny fact that third hit in a chain outdamages a single hit of blade trail, which can be only summarized with, oh no. The big selling point of Greatsword, as it usually happens with warriors' weapons, is the burst skill. In this case, burst only does damage, and in relatively small AoE, but also grants fury and deals roughly 50% more damage against anything below half. And to no one's surprise, having to bash someone over the head to get adrenaline means that once you get enough of it, it's usually not so difficult to find below half health target. Arc Divider does exactly the same amount of damage as Arcing Slice does to low targets, but to all targets instead, and in twice the radius. Not much besides damage, but the damage in question is consistent, reliable, and last but not least, significant. All signifiers of a good damage skill. To point something out quickly, improved damage of first level Arcing Slice is almost the same as the third level Eviscerate. Greatsword bursts are the very strong contenders for best pure damage skill in Warrior's entire arsenal, and that alongside Whirlwind Attack being at its worst solid, pulls just hard enough to keep combined mediocrity of Russian Blade Trail as well as confident uselessness of 100 Blades afloat. Returning to what I said at the beginning of the video, I don't hate Greatsword. Between a range harass tool and 2 gap closes, one from which comes pre-equipped with evasion frames, and a respectable AoE nuke on top of that, Greatsword finds good use in pretty much every situation conceivable. And because we either play Defense Discipline or PvE, we can capitalize on Greatsword's mid-range prowess when it's most effective, and swap to something less prone to malfunctions once we get back into melee. So we have subpower weapon that greatly complements more functional weapons, with good damaging burst on top of that all, which makes it very good supplement to any power builds war has ever seen. Greatsword could have been great as the name suggests with very minor changes, mostly making 100 Blades less of a kamikaze internship by at least giving it exact same treatment Flurry received, as well as changes related to reliability of skills 4 and 5, by cutting down on bugs, changing ground and projectile into a proper AoE, and allowing to jump and dodge throughout Rush's forced animation. You can agree with me on these proposed changes, or you can notify your local insane asylum that one of their freaks just breached containment. Either way, have a good one, and crabface out.